Hello, romance book lovers. Welcome to Tales from the Heart. I'm Jenna Harte, and each week I post new episodes from my stories of crime and passion. Right now, we're listening to With This Ring I Thee Kill, Book 3 of the Valentine Mysteries. This week is Episode 11, Chapter 11. Now, if you'd like to read along or get ahead in the story, you can get With This Ring I Thee Kill from your favorite ebook retailer or save by buying direct from me. With This Ring I Thee Kill is the third book in the series. If you missed book 1, Deadly Valentine, you can listen by checking earlier episode postings, or if you'd like to read it, you can get the ebook of Deadly Valentine for free at my website at jennaharte.com. Now, book 2, Old Flames Never Die, is available also in earlier episode postings or available at your favorite ebook retailer or again for less through my shop. Tales from the Heart is posted to podcast platforms and YouTube each week. These episodes are edited to censor out intimate content. If you'd like to have a version that includes the spicy bits, plus early access, behind-the-scenes information about the stories, bonus content, and more, please join me over at Ream Stories. Learn more at reamstories.com/Jenna Harte. Now, never miss the mystery of romance by hitting the subscribe button, and remember that all the details and links you might need are just a click away in the description. Snuggle up, get comfy, and enjoy the show.
Chapter 11. The next 10 days passed quickly without incident involving the ring. Tess started to relax, thinking that maybe whoever Tim and Cal had been working with gave up or were waiting to see what Jack planned to do with the ring. With concerns about the ring on the back burner, Tess spent much of her time planning the wedding. This time, she enjoyed the process of putting together the event she wanted, not what her mother insisted on. She spent a day in Richmond with Helen, Cameron, and Kate finding the perfect dress, as long as she didn't gain any weight. True to his word, Jack was actively involved in the process, contacting the caterers and finding a source for tulips, even though they were out of season. When Tess wasn't with Jack planning a wedding or practicing the honeymoon, she was with Cesarier learning about running a lingerie business. It amazed Tess how quickly she secured a business loan and suspected Jack might have had a hand in it. Jack reminded her that she was an heiress and didn't need him to get a bank loan. Either way, Tess was growing excited about starting her life with Jack and making a living with couture underwear. So excited that even the call from her mother saying they'd be at the wedding couldn't ruin Tess's spirits.
"That's good, right?"
Jack asked, as he dipped his finger in the bowl of chocolate that would soon become a truffle cake.
"I guess. They weren't going to come, I'm certain of it. But they got a call from the senator."
"The senator?"
Jack stopped mid-dip. His surprise answered her question about whether or not he asked the senator to intervene.
"He even arranged to have a car pick them up at the airport, and of course we all have to have dinner at his house."
"Did he tell them about my relationship with him?"
Tess wondered if Jack would ever be comfortable with the idea that the senator was his biological father.
"No, but they were impressed that you had good connections."
She batted his hand away when he went in for another finger scoop of chocolate.
"Good connections."
He grinned.
"I'm moving up in the world. I wonder what made him call."
"I'm guessing Helen. I'm not sure she believes my parents are as horrid as I've made them out to be."
"Are you all right that she did that?"
"I was annoyed at first, but then I thought finally everyone will know that I'm not exaggerating. My parents are snobs."
The truth was, Tess finally accepted her parents' elitist attitudes and decided that however they behaved, she wouldn't let it ruin her wedding. They'd ooh and ah over the senator, but Tess felt certain they wouldn't accept Jack, which would be harder to forgive. They'd definitely hate her new career choice, which made her eager to tell them. Maybe she'd tell them at dinner with the senator just to watch them try to control their horror in front of him. She was sure her mother would equate her new business to running a brothel. The day of her parents' arrival came quickly, and Tess might have been preoccupied by it if it wasn't also the day before her wedding. Everything had come together, and all that was left was to have dinner with her parents at the senator's home. She would spend the night at Helen and Tom's to uphold the tradition of the groom not seeing the bride until she walked down the aisle. By the same time tomorrow, she'd be Mrs. Jack Valentine. A sliver of excitement ran through her at the thought. Just a few months earlier, she was coveting a life that kept love at bay and focused on a career that bored her. Jack came into her life, tossed it upside down, and then righted it. She had the afternoon alone, thanks to Helen, who instinctively knew Tess needed solitude. She invited Cora and Cameron over for tea under the guise of making a photo project, showing Jack and Tess at various stages of their lives to share at the reception. Tess sat on the edge of the bed and wondered what Jack would think of her new acquisition for Césarier's boutique. She heard the front door open and Jack call her name.
Upstairs,
she called back.
I love it when you bring your work home. He leaned against the doorframe to savor the woman he'd finally convinced to share her life with him.
Do you like it?
He let his gaze run over the peach lace, down to the peach-colored toenails, and up again. It's all right. He stepped into the room, closing the door behind him. He hadn't heard Cameron or Cora when he entered the house, which meant they were either out or napping. He wasn't going to take any chances. He locked the door.
Just all right? Maybe I should take it off.
She gave him a coy smile that never failed to make his heart do cartwheels. Maybe I could help you.
I wouldn't want to be an imposition.
No imposition. He stepped to her, putting his arms around her and sinking his lips into the delectable curve of her neck. Just a few months ago, she'd been wary of him and too afraid to love. He'd pursued her. He might have been in the driver's seat during the courtship, but there was no doubt that he was putty in Tess's hands. He would give her anything, everything, and starting tomorrow, he'd have his whole life to do just that. But first he had to kiss her. Taking her face in his palms, he brushed his lips over hers and slowly settled into the kiss until he was dizzy from it.
You fog my brain, Valentine.
Ditto, he thought. He wanted to tell her what she meant to him, but words never felt adequate to express the depths of his feelings for her. But here, like this, heart to heart, he sought to have her know she was his world.
The after effects of Jack's bedroom skills went way beyond physical pleasure. Tess felt relaxed and calm, even as she climbed the steps to the Worthington mansion where she would see her parents for the first time in 3 years. In the past, dinner with her parents required a stiff drink to prepare. Turns out, all she needed was Jack. The senator answered the door. He hadn't hired a new butler since his last one went to jail for murder.
Come in,
he said enthusiastically, gesturing them in.
I just heard from your parents' driver and they should be here in 10 minutes.
They followed the senator through the foyer. 4 months ago, her life had changed when feeling sick and put out. Tess looked into Jack's blue-green eyes from across this very foyer. She smiled at the memory. She felt Jack lift her hand to his lips and realized he was sharing the same memory.
Cora isn't with you.
No, Cora can be unpredictable.
Jack's statement was only partially the reason Cora wasn't at dinner. Mostly, Cora refused to go to the senator's house because she still blamed him for her daughter's death.
First impressions are important.
The senator stopped them before entering the parlor.
I wanted to let you know that I didn't tell the Madisons about our situation, but I got the sense that it might help you make a good impression if they knew I was your father.
In theory, that was true, Tess thought, except that Jack was the senator's illegitimate son, which could be worse in her parents' eyes.
I appreciate it, but I think I'll let them judge me on my own merits,
Jack said.
Of course.
The senator smiled, but Tess could see disappointment on his face.
The others are in the parlor.
Jack and Tess greeted Helen, Tom, and Daniel as they entered the room.
The senator says he has champagne chilling, but I can get you something from the bar if you like,
Tom said.
I'm fine, how about you?
Jack asked Tess. She nodded.
I can wait.
Daniel stepped closer to them.
I've got some news.
Oh, not work,
Helen said.
They've got enough to worry about right now with Tess's parents showing up. They don't need mayhem to worry about, too.
I told them I'd let them know,
Daniel said.
Tim's out?
Jack asked. Daniel nodded.
This afternoon. He rented an efficiency on Colonial after being fitted with an ankle bracelet.
I guess that keeps us safe from him,
Tess said.
But not from his friends or competition,
Jack said.
Speaking of friends,
Daniel went on.
Cameron paid him a visit.
Tess felt a punch in the gut. She wanted to believe Cameron, but it was hard when every time she left the house, she hid where she was going or what she was doing.
Did you know about that?
Jack asked. Tess reluctantly shook her head.
But I'm sure she's just keeping up the charade.
Are you sure about that?
Daniel asked.
She's had plenty of time to make a play for the ring, and she hasn't yet.
Tess argued, even though she wasn't convinced.
Maybe because she doesn't want you to know she's involved.
Daniel suggested.
I'm more worried about the possible third party.
Jack said.
Maybe her effort is working.
Tess tried again.
We haven't had any problems since we left Washington.
Before Jack or Daniel could respond, the senator announced the arrival of Tess's parents.
Showtime,
Tess said under her breath. Jack gave her a reassuring squeeze. Her parents walked into the room with the regal air they moved through life with, their eyes scanning, assessing, judging. They appeared to approve of what they saw until their eyes focused on her.
Tess, dear.
Her mother gave Tess a cool embrace and air kiss on the cheek.
Catherine.
Tess's response was equally as cool.
Tess.
Her father said with no effect.
Don.
Tess said with a nod.
This is Jack Valentine, my fiancé.
Jack reached out his hand to Tess's father, giving his hand a firm shake.
Mr. Madison.
He repeated the gesture with Tess's mother.
I'm very pleased to meet you.
Yes, well, I'm glad we had the opportunity before you were married,
her mother said. If Jack heard the condescension, he didn't respond.
It was kind of you to come. I know it is short notice.
Yes, very.
Tess saw her mother's eyes drift to her belly. Tess was about to tell her she wasn't pregnant when the senator interrupted.
Catherine Dunn, this is my daughter Helen, her husband Tom, and my grandson Daniel.
After exchanging pleasantries, the senator offered champagne and made a toast to Jack and Tess. To her parents' credit, they performed their parts well. Dawn asked the senator,
How is it that you know my daughter?
Tess, I've known her since she was a teenager.
The senator replied.
Helen was her teacher at the Jefferson Academy for Girls.
Catherine gave Helen a look that said, So you're the one that took my daughter away? As if they cared, Tess thought.
You've been very kind to Tess all these years. I know that she can be a handful,
Catherine said. Tess rolled her eyes. It was like her mother to talk about her like she was still a child.
Not at all. She's been a joy,
Helen said.
Like family,
Tom agreed.
In fact, there was a time we thought she would be family.
The senator said.
But my grandson was a little slow.
Dad,
Helen interrupted. To his credit, Daniel appeared unfazed.
Well, you two should be happy about this marriage. Jack is very successful, and I don't know anyone as committed to your daughter's happiness as he is.
That's good to hear,
Dawn said.
Yes, Tess doesn't have the best track record when it comes to men,
her mother added. Tess supposed it was partially true.
She won the lottery with Jack,
the senator said.
This wedding is very quick. How and when did you two meet?
Catherine asked.
I've known Tess for years.
Jack said.
Brad Chancellor introduced us.
Tess had hoped to keep Brad out of it, but apparently Jack had other ideas.
Bradley?
Catherine asked.
How do you know him?
He works for me,
Jack said. Catherine glanced at Dawn and then back to Jack. Tess couldn't decipher what might be going through her head.
You must be very successful to work with Bradley and his family. Not works with.
Helen jumped in.
Works for. Brad works for Jack.
Tess nearly laughed at Helen's defense of Jack.
That can't be. He works with his father,
Dawn said.
Not for the last 3 years he hasn't,
Jack said. Her parents exchanged another look, which Tess hoped meant they'd give Jack a little more respect.
Well, that's very good to hear. Let's just hope we make it through tomorrow without her running off again.
I'm in the room,
Tess said.
I know, dear. And I hope you're sure about this. You've been so flighty in your decisions since you left Washington.
Flighty?
Tess could see the mama bear emerging as Helen stepped toward Catherine.
Tess is the most grounded person I know. In fact, I was worried she was too grounded.
Boring.
Daniel grinned over the rim of his champagne glass.
She was boring.
Tess made a face at him.
I just meant, well, with the changes in jobs and running away from her wedding to Bradley, and now all of a sudden getting married.
Catherine stammered.
You do know Brad was gay, right?
Helen asked.
I beg your pardon.
Dawn and Catherine chimed together. Tess shook her head and gave Helen the sign to stop talking.
I never told them that part,
she whispered to Jack.
No wonder they think you're flighty.
He whispered back.
Now might be a good time to mention your new business.
Tess saw the amusement in his eyes and decided he was right.
I don't think I've told you about the business I bought.
She hoped it would take her parents off the gay Brad track.
Business? I thought you had a law practice.
Her father said.
She had a good practice.
Tom said.
Very successful.
Until her office burnt to the ground,
Daniel said. Tess realized they were rallying around her, supporting and protecting her from her parents' critical eye.
So what business is this?
Her father asked.
I'm buying an upscale lingerie boutique.
What? You're going to sell underwear?
Tess nearly offered her mother a chair in case her knees buckled.
Lingerie.
Well, that's just...
Her father was unable to finish his sentence, and Tess thought he might have a heart attack, the way the vein in his neck bulged.
What do you know about lingerie?
Her mother demanded.
I know quite a bit, actually.
Her parents stared at her like she'd grown a second head.
Is that Cesarier's place?
The senator asked.
Yes,
Jack said.
Well, then it's guaranteed to be a success.
Her parents gaped at the senator.
There's nothing quite so pretty as a woman in French silk,
the senator added. Jack grinned.
I have to agree with that.
Tess woke slowly, trying to orient herself to her surroundings. Then it came to her. She was sleeping in her room at Helen and Tom's home. She was sleeping there because it was her wedding day. Joy spread through her until she was smiling big like a loon. When she first agreed to marry Jack, she worried she'd get cold feet as the day approached. The reality was the opposite. Each day closer to the wedding, she grew more eager and excited about becoming Mrs. Jack Valentine. She turned her head to see Cameron sleeping in the other twin bed. Tess wanted to wake her and share her excitement, but remembered that Cameron slept like the dead. When they'd roomed together in graduate school, Cameron had slept through a fire alarm, even after Tess threw a pitcher of water on her. Tess listened for sounds of Helen or Tom moving through the house, but heard nothing. Wanting to work off some of the excited energy, she decided to exercise. It would have the added benefit of sweating off water weight. Her wedding dress fit perfectly yesterday, but last night the senator hadn't wasted any expense to serve an authentic Southern meal. And Tess, trying to avoid conversing with her parents, stuffed her face with it. Now she had water retention that came with eating Virginia ham. She changed into running clothes and made her way to Tom's office, where he'd put a treadmill for his physical therapy after being attacked by the senator's butler. She looked outside. It was a perfect, sunny day. She opened the French doors in Tom's office to check the heat and humidity. It was early, just before 8, so it was warm, the humidity rising with the promise of a hot, wet day that scared many Westerners away from the East Coast. But it wasn't too hot yet. Preferring to run outside, Tess scribbled a quick note to everyone in the house, letting them know where she'd gone. Then she headed outdoors for her final run as a single woman. She ran the route she took whenever she'd stayed with Helen and Tom. As a teenager, she dreamed of living on the established tree-lined streets of the university neighborhood. Now she was living in the country, and it was perfect. More than she'd ever hoped for, especially after the fiasco with Brad 3 years earlier. After 30 minutes of running, Tess could still feel the energy surging, so she took a detour down her old street and past the home that burnt to the ground 3 months ago, also thanks to the senator's butler. She rebuilt the house, but had no plans of moving back. As she passed it, she reminded herself to call the realtor to take it off the market since she and Jack had decided to keep it as a rental. She turned down the street to Helen and Tom's home, slowing to end her run with a cool down. By the time she reached the driveway, she was walking, feeling loose, happy, and ready to get married. She bent to pick up the newspaper when she heard a car speed behind her. She turned just as it came to a screeching halt partway on the sidewalk where she stood. Instinctively, she backed away as a man jumped from the car and ran to her. She started to turn, but he waved a gun at her.
"Don't run or I'll shoot."
He grabbed her hand. She tried to pull away, but his grip was too tight.
"Give me the ring."
What?
It took a moment for Tess to realize what he was asking.
"The ring, damn it."
Tess curled her fingers so he couldn't take her ring.
This isn't the one you want.
"Give it."
He demanded again.
It's not the ring. Look, this one is red. You want the blue diamond.
He stopped. His menacing eyes jerked to hers.
"Where is it?"
It's locked away.
Tess tugged, tried to get away, but he tightened his grip.
"Why would you lock up your engagement ring? Is the wedding off?"
No, it's locked up because people keep trying to steal it. Look, we told Tim that—
Tim has nothing to do with this.
Tess?
She turned to see Cameron standing on the front stoop.
"Get in the car,"
the man demanded. Tess hesitated.
I can get you the ring.
"Yes, you will. Get in the car."
He turned his gun toward Cameron.
"Or your friend is dead."
Tess hesitated, desperate to find a way out of the situation. But then she heard a bang, smelled the burn of gunpowder, and saw Cameron drop to the ground.
All right.
Tess said, making her way to the car.
"Don't try anything stupid."
He pulled away from the curb, knocking over a garbage can as he did. Tess tried looking over her shoulder to see if Cameron was okay, but the kidnapper drove too fast. Had he just killed her friend? Tess sat quietly as her kidnapper drove. She got the feeling that he didn't know what to do next. He must have thought he'd be able to grab the ring and go. She wished she'd been able to hand it to him. He cursed and pulled out his phone.
"She doesn't have it."
Tess could hear talking on the other end, but couldn't make out the words, or if it was a man or woman.
"I've got her with me."
The man winced, pulling the phone away from his ear as yelling came from the other end.
"Do you want it or not? She says it's locked up and can get it."
Tess sat, watching the streets of Jefferson Tavern pass by as her fate played out between two people she didn't know, over a ring she didn't have.
"Where should I take her?"
After a response, he hung up the phone.
Where are you taking me?
He didn't answer. Tess looked at him, but he wasn't paying attention to her. She realized then that she probably wouldn't be getting married today. Maybe she wasn't going to see Jack ever again. She thought about Jack and how he'd respond when he found out she'd been kidnapped. He'd blame himself. Even worse, she worried what would happen to him if she didn't survive. How many times had he told her that she'd saved him, gave him something to live for? She knew he'd nearly lost himself when his mother died. Would Cora be able to help him if she didn't make it? Tess determined that she had to find a way out, for both her and Jack's sake. If only she could figure out how to do it.
At 9 a.m., Jack let the caterer in to get ready for the wedding. He was showered and dressed in his suit even though the wedding was still hours away. He'd promised Tess he'd handle things for the wedding prep. Not knowing how much time that might take, he figured he'd get ready so that the minute she walked in the door, he could take her up the aisle. As the caterer worked in the kitchen and his helper began setting up tables in the dining area, Jack headed toward his office. As he passed the front door, he decided to find out just how hot it was going to be that July day. He opened the door and stepped out onto the expansive porch. The heat and humidity bore down on him like a sauna. The day was going to be hot, which meant he should turn up the AC to compensate for a house full of people. He was about to turn back when a speeding SUV with flashing blue light caught his eye. He wondered what sort of trouble one of his neighbors might be in, until the vehicle slowed and turned up his drive.
Oh, God.
Jack felt his heart jump to his throat as Daniel's SUV skidded to a stop in front of him. Daniel jumped out of the car and Jack met him head-on.
"What's happened?"
he demanded.
Someone's taken Tess.
"What? Where?"
We don't know where.
How could this happen? Jack could barely contain the fear and anger that lapped at him.
She went for a run this morning. The guy grabbed her right in front of the house, took a shot at Cameron.
Shot?
He missed, but he's armed.
Tim?
I've got men talking to Tim now.
Why not you? You're the one on this case. Jack couldn't understand why Daniel was here and not looking for Tess. He didn't realize until Daniel pushed him that he'd grabbed Daniel's shoulders and pinned him to the car.
First, I came here because I thought you'd want to know, and second, this is about the ring, which means whoever took Tess will be contacting you, and I want to be here for that.
Jack stepped back. Yes, of course.
Cameron says she thinks it's the guy that attacked her in D.C.
Is he with Tim?
So far, Tim is denying it, and everyone's sense is that he's telling the truth. Since he's gotten out of jail, he hasn't gone anywhere but his lawyer's office, and no one has visited him except Cameron.
Does he know who it could be? Daniel's face turned feral.
He's pleading the fifth.
The desire to punch something had Jack turning away from Daniel.
The kidnapper is going to call you, Jack. When he does, I want you to keep him talking. Do I have your permission to access your phone, both landline and cell?
Yes, of course, whatever you need to do.
It goes without saying that when he calls, you need to talk to Tess too, to make sure she's all right.
Jack nodded. The sound of another vehicle coming up the drive had him hoping that a proactive, resourceful police officer had found and saved Tess. But the car was Helen's. She threw herself into Jack's arms, taking him off guard. Over time, Helen had become cordial, but she'd still maintained a distance from Jack. Now she was sobbing in his arms.
I'm so sorry, Jack. I had no idea she'd left the house. I wouldn't have let her.
She wouldn't have listened, Mom,
Daniel said. It's not your fault. Jack stepped back from Helen's arms. He didn't want her guilt or her pity because he didn't deserve it. It's my fault. I bought the ring.
Listen, playing the blame game doesn't help her,
Daniel said.
You both need to focus on getting Tess back.
Of course, you're right.
Helen sniffed and wiped away her tears. Jack nodded. A loud crash came from inside the house. The caterers, Jack said by way of explanation. Then it hit him. He might not get married. He might never see Tess again. The realization nearly brought him to his knees. Do you think I should ask them to leave?
No.
Helen said with vehemence.
No. You're getting Tess back and getting married.
Jack looked to Daniel.
Mom, we won't want all the people here getting in the way.
She looked sharply at Daniel.
You go find her and bring her back. She's getting married. Today.
Jack's thinking was the same as Daniel's. He didn't want witnesses to this disaster or his grief.
I'll take care of them. And the guests, you two stop standing there and save Tess.
Jack's phone rang, causing all three to stop. He pulled the phone from his pocket. It's a blocked number. Daniel nodded.
It's him.
Jack swallowed hard and opened the phone. This is Jack Valentine.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Tales from the Heart. I hope you enjoyed it and that you will be back to find out what happens next. Will they be able to save Tess? And will the wedding go on as planned? Now remember, you can listen to full uncensored episodes over at reamstories.com/Jenna Harte. Just click the follow button and then select With This Ring I Thee Kill audio for all the episodes. If you'd like to read along or get ahead in the story, you can get With This Ring I Thee Kill from your favorite ebook retailer or save by buying direct from me. All the details and links you might need are just a click away in the description. Make sure you don't miss the next episode. Hit the subscribe button so you'll know when it's posted. Thank you again for listening, and until next time, this is Jenna Harte wishing you peace, love, and happily ever after.